I am rolling out English muffins and also assisting Drew with his first time rolling out English muffins. On these guys, the dough is feeling great today, and English muffins are my personal favorite. Whenever a customer comes in and asks me my personal taste, they always seem to be a little surprised when I say English muffins. They're definitely what I eat the most. They're denser than what you might expect when someone says English muffin, which is one of the best things about them. I find that typical English muffins are more of a snack than a meal bread. They're not particularly filling, so I like how hearty these are. They've got a nice tangy flavor to them as well. When I remember to wake up early enough, I make a breakfast sandwich out of them to bring to work, and then hop in and make some more. I really enjoy these. And also just this English muffin dough is really versatile. We can make a lot of things with them. They're probably the least temperamental dough that we have. Just a big fan all around. And I like the square shape. Probably the least important feature, but it's also nice in terms of not wasting more dough than you need to. And we don't waste the dough with these anyway. We're collecting the scraps in here. And we use them to make cinnamon rolls for the weekend for Main Street Harvest. We coat the trays with semolina. I was telling Drew earlier that the semolina is less important, in my opinion, for getting the English muffins not to stick on the tray, but it helps give the nice iconic crust on the bottom. We gotta make sure that you'll see all the table flour here. That's the more important part for not getting the dough to stick to the table. But the semolina gives that nice little crunchy, crispy bottom. No problem. These look nice. Definitely miles better than the first few times that I ever rolled out English muffins, for sure. When you're kind of like trying to get the individual ones not to stick, the bench knife kind of helps there. Okay. So you can just kind of chop it and then physically separate them, and then yeah, no problem. Did you get all your scraps in the bin?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this back in for now, and I'm gonna grab the other English muffin bin. I will go the long way. That goes back there for now. I really have to ask Logan what this is about. That bin says Logan's shame on it. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with that, but this is what I'm here for. What's with the bin that says Logan's shame? What is that?
That is my shame.
But what is it?
It's sourdough that was forgotten next to the oven for several hours.
Okay.
I don't think it's salvageable.
But it was still worth keeping?
So it's not worth keeping.
All right, noted. Logan's shame is not worth keeping. All right. Yeah, this one is looking mighty puffy. So right now, I am separating the dough from the sides of the bin. Even though we oil these bins, they can still get quite sticky. And the more that we keep the dough from sticking now, the easier it is on everyone who has to do dishes. There's nothing worse than crusty, dried dough. Yesterday when we were open, there's a gentleman here for business for the day who was here from Toronto. I think he said he worked for Tim Hortons. And his mom, who lives in South Africa, was a big fan of proof and made him come before his flight to come check it out. And he was sitting right over here as I was doing this same thing with English muffins, and was so intrigued by it that he was convinced to wait for fresh ones to come out of the oven for him to take with him on the plane. That kind of thing about having this open concept has been really neat. Just seeing how far removed a lot of people are from the food making process and knowing where their food comes from and how it's made. Some people have said things kind of to the tune of, I didn't know that's something you could make. And my response to that is, where do you think it comes from? Someone's got to make it. My guidelines from before on the rough dimensions are still kind of visible on the table. If you start out with the shape that you're going for, it's much easier to get your desired shape in the end, meaning I'm trying to make sure my edges are fairly straight and squared off, because that's what I want in the end. If you start with that now, then it's easier to get that in the end. Definitely saves you some headache. And, dough doesn't necessarily like to be square, it likes to be round. So you kind of have to encourage it to go in the way that you want. So the rolling pins we have in here, we have two. There's this wooden guy that's missing a handle, which actually comes in handy when we're working on this table because of this wall here. If it were to have the handle on the other side, we wouldn't be able to utilize as much space. So this is actually the rolling pin we grabbed for English muffin rollout. And then this rolling pin is the one that's designated for the pastry sheeter. They're much hardier than the ones at home. Any work with a rolling pin at home that's not really intensive, the kind you can get at the grocery store or just like Williams, Sonoma, Target, whatever, are just fine, but they're really still kind of flimsy. If you're really serious about baking and about bread and you need, the kind of rolling pin that you could also use as a weapon, you should probably go to a restaurant supply store. That's where they got all the good stuff. When I started kind of getting more serious about baking just at home as a personal interest, I ended up investing in a nice rolling pin from a restaurant supply store. Like once or twice a year, I would hand laminate pastry, and it really does make a difference as far as, when you're rolling out something thick and hearty like this, you need your rolling pin to have a bit of heft to it. And the ones that you just get at a popular box store have flimsy handles that break off immediately. As long as I've been at Proof, so about 2 years now, this thing has always been missing one handle, so I don't really know the story behind that. But it gets the job done. It's nice. So right now I'm checking the edges. When I roll out English muffin doughs, the ends tend to get a bit thicker. If you kind of check different metrics every once in a while during the process, it's better for you in the end, because if you get it out to the dimensions you want and then you notice, oh wow, it's really thin in weird spots, then it's harder to correct. But if you're cognizant of that during the whole process, then it just makes for a better outcome and makes for an easier time. So I like to run, so when I'm running my hands over, one, I'm checking for stickiness, and I'm also just checking to see that the dough is level. So as I continue to roll it out, I can say, okay, well, it's thicker right here, so I should be pushing the dough from here. Because if you're just continually pushing from here, it's just going to taper down and become really thin and make for very sad English muffins and sad people who buy the English muffins. Since I've kind of lost my guidelines, I just kind of want to see where I'm at. Yeah, I've got a ways. to go here. We used to use these for measurements, but the measurement lines are long gone, so now we use a tape measure. We clean it every day. Alright, I'm only about an inch short for the height. The width has got some ways to go, so I'm going to work on that first. If I get this part even rolled out, then it's easier to just adjust the measurements the other way, just a tiny bit. This dough was mixed 2 days ago, so it's roughly 48 hours old and has been bulk fermenting in the fridge a long time. Likely not going to get baked off until tomorrow for our big market bake. Like I mentioned before, this is the least temperamental dough that we have and really benefits from the long time in the fridge. It could also be formed and baked right away without any compromise. But it's pretty rare that I don't think we ever mix and form and bake the same day. It's always been in the fridge for at least a day. This one, like, I have never seen a case of the English muffins being overproofed, suffering from being in the fridge too long. The oldest I've seen in the fridge is a 3-day, and it looks and behaves just as great as doughs that haven't been in the fridge as long. It'd be interesting to do like a side-by-side comparison on like the crumb and flavor if we had like a batch of English muffins that was bulking in the fridge 1, 2, or 3 days. I think that would be interesting. But as someone who eats these quite a lot, I've definitely not noticed a difference in quality. All right, this is looking pretty nice. And actually, we roll these out just a bit over our desired measurements because we trim the edges so we can keep the formed English muffin lines nice and square and crisp. And then we preserve the scraps for either cinnamon rolls. We also make just dinner rolls with them. In the past, I've also made like garlic knots with them or garlic braids. They're just kind of an all-purpose dough. It's really fantastic for really anything. You can go sweet or savory with them, depending on what you do with it. Right now, my bicicleta is set to 3-inch width. I'm not cutting here, I'm just making general guidelines for where I will cut. It's kind of a, everyone's dad says, measure twice, cut once, including my dad. And we're good to cut. Go around, trim the border first. In you go. I'll add that to the actual scrap bin that we have going in the fridge. Here on this edge, I see kind of some bonus muffins that we can use, so I'm just gonna keep those intact as I take the edges off. We recently got a bunch of new bench knives, these guys, and I think most of us had totally forgotten that bench knives are actually sharp. They're knives, because we had been using the same ones for so long, and I mean, they were getting the job done. They were doing what we needed them to do, but we forgot that, they're sharp objects. And so when we got an influx of new bench knives, some of us were getting nicked and cut by them. when we were handling them.